the answer to how does free agent X affect the draft is it doesn't. So we got this comment earlier in the show on YouTube from PH asking about Deebo. Obviously, Commanders trade for Deebo Samuel. You'll know that by now. How does this impact our picking a true wide receiver 2? Do we focus on the draft or still focus on free agency? First, I think people think about depth charts way too much like they're playing Madden. The pieces can move a lot easier in the NFL than they can on Madden. Unless you do formation subs, whatever, on every single game. I guess that's the thing you can do if you have a lot of time on your hands. But if you want to get guys in specific spots of, hey, Deebo's going to line up outside here, inside here, Luke is inside some, outside some, Terry, you can move guys around. And the idea of wide receiver 2, he's actually wide receiver 3 because we want this guy to line up outside, because in Madden, before they invented the slot receiver category, your wide receiver 3 was your slot guy automatically. That's not how it actually works in the NFL. So I do think we need to, on some level, stop using that terminology and just think about the wide receiver room and how they move in rotation. With that said, currently, they do not have a guy to line up on the outside, to use the NFL terminology, predominantly as a Z receiver. Okay? So Terry is what we call an X. He lines up opposite side of the tight end. He is on the ball. It is, you're getting the number one corner, and that is predominantly where Terry lines up. Okay? Your Z is your opposite side, and in your traditional, two wide receiver sets, he's lining up to the side of the tight end. Tight end's on the ball. He's off the ball. It allows him to get freer releases, etc. But he's an outside receiver. And there's certain route concepts in the West Coast offense that are designed, take advantage of those different splits and the X and the Z and the spacing of it all and blah, blah, blah. Now you add slot receivers, you add some of these spread formations, you add bunches, you add, all these different things. And who's the X, who's the Z, who's the F, who's the H, who's all these different, terminologies, or how different teams label them with the lettering system. It doesn't really matter that much. But on a baseline level, you're going to have two guys that line up outside and some guys that line up inside. They are movable and interchangeable to an extent, depending on the offense. But predominantly, on average, two guys are going to line up on the outside more than other guys, and they don't have the second guy right now. So, to that end, wide receiver 2, they still need. And what I would say more directly to the question, Anthony, is, and why I say porque no los dos, is the draft is not somewhere you can go to and reliably pick up anything unless you were in a situation like Washington was last year, where you are reliably getting a quarterback because you have the second overall pick in a draft where there are 3 guys that in almost any other year would have gone 1 overall. If that's your situation, great. Or if you are Tennessee this year and you are saying, come hell or high water, we're getting Abdul Carter and we want an edge, or Travis Hunter's 100% our guy, and you have the number 1 pick in control of the draft, okay, fine. Don't go sign an edge player. That's a way you can operate. But if you're Washington sitting at 29 and you're like, we're going to cut Andrew Wiley because we want to get a right tackle in the draft, and then all of the tackles that you thought would be there at 29 aren't there, now what do? They start falling off the board, or you get desperate and have to trade up and do something dumb? Do you take the next best guy at 29, even though you had a 3rd-round grade on him? Do you say, I guess we'll try again at 29th pick of the 2nd round? Oh, God, that guy, we had a 3rd-round grade on, and we'd be fine to take in the 2nd round. Someone else liked him a little bit more. He went at pick 27 in the 2nd round, and now we're screwed again. No, you don't do that. And I think that's the lesson of last year. Good team building says you go out in free agency, and free agency puts a floor underneath you. Free agency says, if we can't get better than this in the draft, at least we got this. But the level of free agent, unless you're spending big money, you go sign Josh Sweat, yeah, you're probably not going to use, or you don't feel as compelled to use a 1st-round pick on an edge player if you spend $20 million on Josh Sweat. But even then, you could. Dorrance Armstrong, instead of being your 2, becomes your 3. Javonte Jean-Baptiste is your 4. Okay. That's something we can work with. But if Josh Sweat's your 1, okay, that's fine. We can work with that too. But typically it's much more of the Dorrance Armstrong levels, the Olamide Zaccheaus levels. No one that's going to prevent you from upgrading on a cheap contract for the future. And that's what it means when Adam Peters says we're going to build through the draft. Our stars, the guys that we want to have for the long term, those guys we're getting in the draft. Free agents are to fill in the gaps, put a environment around those guys to help raise them, if you will, and to make sure that we're not SOL and we literally don't get to training camp going, oh my God, we don't have enough of this position. And I think especially true, that's proven this year when you look at how bad the free agent crop is. Good players, there were a couple that were going to be free agents. Osa Odighizuwa, Dallas re-signed him. Taylor, the left tackle from the Rams. Alaric Jackson? I think it's Jackson, not Taylor.
Yeah. Jackson.
Alaric Jackson, left tackle of the Rams. He's a starting caliber NFL left tackle. That's why he didn't get to free agency. And so you're going to have to draft those guys, from your good players to your star players. Your free agents, that's really not what it's for. So what does Debo do? He makes it so that you have less pressure to get another weapon. He gets you a good weapon for right now, and he does not change remotely how you address your receiver position otherwise in free agency, really, or, frankly, the draft.
Yeah, I think you put it perfectly. And also, I think a thing when it comes to the draft and sort of kind of, I think what we did last year in terms of drafting, the best player available, because, again, you don't know how the draft is going to fall. I don't think D-tackle was, number 1 on our priority list heading into the draft last year, but that's what fell to us. And I think that's how Adam Peters and, crew will continue to move.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think you want another great example of this, the Eagles. The Eagles always draft offensive and defensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because you can never have enough of them. And the NFL moves fast enough that there are no veterans that are basically no veterans that aren't 1 year removed from being off your team, right? You sign guys to 3-year deals in the NFL, which you very rarely see longer. A guy like Odighizuwa got 4. Okay, so he'll be an exception. But most guys sign, Luvu, Biotish, those guys, right? 3-year deals. There's very little guaranteed money in the 3rd year. So you can typically go 1 year, okay, now we're in year 2, and after year 2, that guy's probably going to want an extension if he's good, or if he hasn't been good, team might move on and cut bait, and you get the salary cap savings, a la what the Commanders are about to do to John Allen. Wasn't that long ago that he signed that deal. Yeah. I think for him it was a 4-year, so for him it was even an extra year. But by the time there's 1 year remaining, typically that last year, it's little guaranteed money, and you can move on. And so for a rookie deal, which those are all 4-year deals, I think later rounds might be 3, but you're talking about 3-4-year deals that are the cheapest deals you can get. Why wouldn't you add that kind of depth to any room? Like, no one's got 5 veterans in a room. Like, you're not getting 5 veteran wide receivers. It's a silly thing to do. It's a terrible way to distribute your salary cap. So, yes. Does Debo decrease the chances that Olamide Zaccheaus and or Jamison Crowder is back next year as a slot predominantly move piece, weapon, get the ball in his hands type player? Yeah. That's how it affected free agency. If that kind of guy is available in the draft, I bet you Adam Peters will take him. If that guy's the best player on their board. Because the draft is where you find the stars. The draft is where you get the long-term control that is completely team-friendly and how you build your roster over time. And I just hope that, that everyone who hears this can have more intelligent discussions over the next 2 months. That when the Commanders go sign the next free agent, that you don't go, they go re-sign Zach Ertz and John Bates, and they have Ben Sinnott from last year. They could still draft a tight end, and I'd be fine with it. Because Ertz is going to be a 1-year deal probably. Or if it's a 2-year deal, they can cut him after 1. I guarantee you that'll be the structure of the deal. Okay. Finally hits the age cliff. Cool, we got our replacement. He's already here. Like, that is how this goes. And so the answer to how does free agent X affect the draft is it doesn't. For basically every single position but quarterback. And luckily for the Commanders, they don't got to worry about that one for a while.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.